The first light of dawn crept softly over the rooftops of the village, its golden fingers touching the thatched eaves and dew-kissed leaves. The scent of wet earth and the faint smoke from early fires mingled in the crisp morning air. In a small, weathered house at the edge of the village, a slender figure moved swiftly through the shadows. Amara, no more than 17, her hair tied back in a simple braid, worked quietly in the dim kitchen, the hem of her worn dress brushing the cold stone floor. Her hands, though roughened by labor, moved with gentle precision. She kneaded dough for the morning bread, stirred a bubbling pot of millet porridge, and laid out the fine linens for her stepsister's morning meal. The aroma of warm bread began to fill the room, but Amara scarcely paused to breathe it in. There was much to be done. Above her, footsteps thudded on the wooden floorboards as the household began to stir. The house had once been bright and full of laughter when Amara's father was alive. A prosperous merchant with a heart as generous as his fortune, he had loved his daughter dearly. But after his sudden illness and untimely death, all had changed. His widow, a sharp-tongued woman named Hawa, brought with her a daughter of her own, Zira. Where Amara was quiet and gentle, Zira was proud and vain, her beauty like a blade she wielded without mercy. From the moment Hawa took control of the household, Amara's life had become one of servitude. She rose before the sun each day, completing a long list of chores meant to keep her too weary to speak of freedom. Mending Zira's silk gowns, polishing their mother's silver combs, scrubbing the tiled floors until her knees bled, such tasks were her daily burden. Now, as the sun rose higher, Amara fetched water from the well, balancing the heavy jars upon her slender shoulders. Villagers passing by offered her sympathetic glances, their eyes lingering for a moment before darting away. No one dared speak on her behalf. Hawa's temper was well known, and her reach extended beyond the home. Those who crossed her often found themselves without trade or favor. A sharp voice broke the morning air. "Amara! The hem of my blue gown still has a loose thread. Must you ruin everything I wear?" Zira's voice was rich with disdain. She stood at the doorway in a robe of violet silk, her hair cascading in glossy waves. Beside her, Hawa smirked, arms folded across her chest. Without hesitation, Amara set down her jars and hurried inside, kneeling to inspect the gown. Her slender fingers moved quickly, correcting the flaw with tiny, perfect stitches. Zira watched with narrowed eyes, her lips curled in a mocking smile. "Honestly, Mother, I don't know why we keep her. She's more trouble than she's worth." Hawa sniffed. "Because servants cost money. This one works for scraps." Amara said nothing. Her gaze remained fixed on her work, though her heart pounded beneath her ribs. Outside, the village continued to wake, the blacksmith's hammer struck iron, merchants unfurled their wares, children laughed in the dusty streets. Yet within this house, Amara remained a shadow, unseen and unheard. But deep within her heart, a small spark still glowed, a stubborn ember of hope, waiting for a wind to fan it into flame. By midday, the usual hum of the village gave way to a strange excitement. Word traveled swiftly from merchant to farmer, from housewife to her neighbors, until even the children knew messengers had arrived from the royal court. Their elegant horses, draped in blue and gold silks, stood proudly in the village square, watched by an eager crowd. One of the king's heralds, a tall man clad in gleaming armor, unfurled a scroll and began to read in a booming voice that carried through the market. By command of His Majesty King Idris and His Royal Highness Prince Malik, a festival shall be held at the palace in 3 fortnights' time. In celebration of the prince's coming of age, he shall choose a bride from among the maidens of the kingdom. All eligible young women of noble or common birth are invited to attend. Let it be known, no worthy maiden shall be barred from the royal court on that day." A wave of gasps and delighted whispers spread through the crowd. Prince Malik, the heir to the throne, renowned for his wisdom, courage, and rare kindness. Tales of his dark eyes and quiet strength had filled the dreams of many a young girl. Hawa and Zira, who had been inspecting fine fabrics in the market, hurried home at once, dragging Amara behind them. "You heard the summons," Hawa said, her face alight with ambition. "The prince is to wed. And who better than my Zira to grace the royal court?" Zira smirked, her eyes glittering. They will see my beauty and forget all others. I shall be queen before the year ends. As soon as they enter the house, Hawa barked orders. Amara. You will prepare Zira's gowns. The emerald silk must be rehemmed. The gold brocade needs fresh lace. Polish her shoes until they gleam like mirrors. Without complaint, Amara gathered the garments and supplies. Though her hands ached from the morning's work, she began at once. For days afterward, her life was consumed with needle and thread, cloth and polish. Zira preened in the mirror while Amara worked tirelessly by the hearth, her fingers moving in graceful, practiced motions. She scrubbed each delicate fabric until it shone, repaired tiny tears with invisible stitches, and brushed away every trace of dust or wear. Yet while her body bent to her labor, her mind wandered. At night, lying upon her thin straw mattress, Amara allowed herself a single, secret thought: what would it be like to see the palace? To walk its marbled halls, hear the royal musicians, witness the dazzling festival? But such fancies quickly dissolved in the face of reality. A servant girl had no place among nobles and royals. She would not be permitted to go, and even if she were, what could she wear? A threadbare dress and worn sandals would only bring shame. No, better not to dream too deeply. Still, in the quiet hours, when the stars shone bright and silver through her small window, Amara whispered her hopes into the night air. Not for wealth or marriage to a prince, but for freedom, freedom to choose her own path, to live without cruelty or fear. The days sped by. Soon the festival would arrive. The village buzzed with anticipation, tailors were swamped with orders, and merchants charged double for the finest oils and jewelry. Mothers instructed their daughters in courtly manners, fathers prayed for a prosperous match. And in the midst of it all, Amara worked in silence, her gaze lowered, her hopes carefully hidden beneath the weight of duty. The morning of the festival dawned clear and bright, the sky a flawless expanse of blue. From the crack of dawn, the village stirred with unusual energy. Girls clad in their finest garments strolled through the streets, accompanied by proud parents and well-wishers. The air hummed with the scent of fresh flowers, rich perfumes, and baking bread. The road leading to the palace would soon be lined with carts and carriages, every maiden eager to catch the prince's eye. Inside the house, Zira stood before a polished mirror, admiring her reflection. Her emerald gown shimmered in the light, its flowing silk trailing gracefully behind her. Her hair was wound in intricate braids, adorned with gold beads that clicked softly when she moved. Hawa hovered nearby, fussing over her daughter's jewelry. "You look like a queen already, my darling," Hawa said with pride. "The prince won't glance at another." Zira's smile was sharp. "Of course not. Who could compare?" In the corner, unnoticed, Amara folded the last of the fresh linens and began tidying the room. She dared not lift her gaze, though her heart beat faster with every passing moment. For days she had told herself not to hope, yet some small, foolish part of her still wondered, if only she could glimpse the palace from afar. But Hawa had other plans. Her eyes fell on Amara, and a cruel thought sparked in her mind. Leaning close to Zira, she whispered, "We can't have her skulking about. Imagine if one of the guards mistook her for a guest, how embarrassing." Zira laughed. "She's not fit to be seen by a rat, let alone royalty." Without further word, they seized Amara by the arm. She gasped but did not resist as they dragged her through the house to the small, windowless storeroom near the kitchen, a place used for storing sacks of grain and bundles of old cloth. Hawa shoved her inside and bolted the heavy wooden door. "Stay here until we return," she hissed. "You'll not spoil Zira's moment." Zira added with a smirk, "Count yourself lucky. The prince deserves a queen, not a drudge in rags." Their laughter echoed down the hall as they walked away, the sound of their slippers fading into silence. Alone in the dark, Amara sank to the floor. The faint smell of dust and old grain filled her nose. Her heart ached, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wrapped her arms around her knees, taking slow, steady breaths. In the stifling blackness, her voice broke the stillness, a soft, trembling song. A melody her mother had once sung long ago, when she was small and the world had been kinder. Those shadows fall and light grows thin. A spark within will rise again. Her voice steadied as she sang, each word weaving through the darkness like a fragile thread of hope. For a moment, the gloom of the storeroom seemed to lift. She would endure this, as she had endured so much. Though trapped and forgotten, she would not let despair consume her. Somewhere beyond these walls, the sun still shone. The world turned. And perhaps, just perhaps, her time would come. The village road was alive with the sounds of footsteps and laughter, bright carriages rumbling past stalls adorned with garlands. Banners bearing the royal crest fluttered in the breeze as maidens and their families made their way toward the distant gleam of the palace gates. Among the bustle, a lone rider approached the edge of the village. He was no nobleman, but a palace servant named Madhu, known for his quick wit and sharp eyes. The youngest son of a court steward, Madhu had been sent ahead to deliver last-minute messages to various households. The prince, mindful of tradition, wished every eligible maiden to be reminded that her presence was requested, no exceptions. Madhu stopped before Hawa's house, consulting the scroll he carried. He rapped lightly on the door, his knuckles brushing the smooth wood. A moment later, Hawa answered, wrapped in a velvet shawl, her smile wide and false. "You are from the court?" she asked, her eyes flicking over the official seal on the scroll. Madhu gave a polite nod. "By order of His Highness Prince Malik, I deliver a summons to all eligible young women of this household. They are requested at today's festival." "Well, you may tell His Highness that my daughter, Zira, has already set off for the palace," Hawa replied briskly. "There is no one else here of any worth." Without waiting for a response, she closed the door in his face. Madhu raised a brow but made no protest. He turned to leave when something, a faint, melodic sound, reached his ear. A voice, soft yet unwavering, sang from within the house. Though the words were indistinct, their tone was unmistakable, hope threaded through sorrow, a heart unbroken despite hardship. Curious, Madhu circled the house quietly. Near the back, he found a narrow window set high in the wall, barely large enough to peer through. From within came the muffled song. He stood on a stone, craning his neck, and caught a glimpse of a girl seated on the floor of a dark storeroom. "Hello," he called softly. "Who is there?" The singing stopped. A moment's silence, then a hesitant reply, "Who speaks?" "My name is Madhu. I serve at the palace." "Are you locked inside?" A pause, then a whisper. "Yes. They would not let me go to the festival." Madhu frowned, anger stirring in his chest. No girl deserved such treatment. He glanced about, no one was near. He searched for an entrance and found the storeroom door barred from the outside. With practiced ease, he unlatched it, opening the door just enough to reveal the slender figure within. Amara blinked at the sudden light, her eyes adjusting. Her dress was plain and dust-stained, her hair falling in loose waves. Yet even in her disheveled state, there was a quiet grace about her, a dignity that no hardship could erase. "Quickly," Madhu urged. "The festival has not yet begun. Come with me, you must not miss your chance." Amara hesitated. "I have nothing fit to wear, they would laugh at me." Madhu considered. Then, without a word, he slipped off his own plain cloak, gray wool, unadorned but clean, and draped it over her shoulders. It covered her well enough to pass unnoticed among the richly dressed crowd. "There," he said, offering a reassuring smile. "No one will stop you now. Walk with the others. Once inside the palace grounds, no one will question your place." Tears pricked Amara's eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "Go," Madhu urged gently. "Before anyone sees." With a steadying breath, Amara stepped into the sunlight, the borrowed cloak wrapped tightly around her. She kept her head down, moving quickly toward the road where groups of villagers were still making their way to the palace. By the time the towering spires of the royal palace came into view, her heart pounded with both fear and wonder. The grand gates stood open, flanked by guards in gleaming armor. Beyond, gardens bloomed in riotous color, and musicians played melodies that drifted on the breeze. The courtyard was already thronged with guests, noble women in shimmering gowns, merchants' daughters in their finest dresses, all vying for the prince's attention. Amara slipped through the crowd, unnoticed in her simple cloak. She lingered at the edges of the great hall, her breath caught in her throat. The marble columns soared high above, their surfaces gleaming like starlight. Tapestries of royal blue and gold hung from the walls, depicting ancient victories. Candles and towering chandeliers bathed the room in a soft glow. For a moment, Amara stood still, drinking in the splendor. Though she had dreamed of this place, reality far surpassed her imagination. Yet she dared not step forward, she remained near the shadows, content to simply witness the wonders before her. In that moment, the first soft notes of the royal fanfare began to play. Somewhere beyond the throng, the prince himself would soon appear. And so it was that Amara, the girl once locked away, stood quietly among the crowd, her presence hidden, her heart alight with a fragile, flickering hope. The festival had begun in earnest. The great courtyard of the royal palace overflowed with life and color as the afternoon sun bathed everything in golden light. Musicians lined the marble steps, their flutes and lutes filling the air with bright, lilting tunes. Long tables sagged beneath the weight of exotic fruits, sugared confections, and goblets of spiced wine. Silk banners fluttered high above, their deep blues and rich gold shimmering with every breeze. The nobles had arrived in force. Their finest carriages, gilded and enameled, stood in neat rows beyond the gates. The daughters of dukes, merchants, and wealthy landowners paraded through the garden paths and into the grand hall, each more finely dressed than the last. Jewels glittered on slender necks and delicate wrists, hair pinned high with gold combs and pearl-inlaid pins. The air was thick with the mingled scents of jasmine, rose, and amber oil. Each girl moved with carefully rehearsed grace, a smile fixed in place, their eyes bright with ambition. Groups of them clustered together, whispering in sweet tones, only to break apart with forced laughter whenever the prince passed by. Prince Malik, tall and broad-shouldered, moved among them with practiced ease. His deep brown eyes missed nothing, though a quiet weariness shadowed his gaze. This was not the first such festival he had attended in his 20 years, though it was the most important, for today, tradition dictated, he must begin the search for a bride. He had always known this day would come. His father, King Idris, had ruled with wisdom, and Malik had long been groomed to follow in his footsteps. But Malik had one desire that often set him apart from other nobles. He longed for sincerity, for a partner whose heart matched her beauty, not one who sought only wealth or status. Yet so far, disappointment trailed him like a persistent shadow. The noble girls who approached him smiled too brightly, spoke words that felt hollow. They admired his wealth, his fine garments, the crown he would one day wear, but not the man beneath it. As he made his way through the hall, another trio of ladies swept before him, their brocade skirts whispering over the floor. Each curtsied low, offering flattery so thick it might have choked a lesser man. Malik smiled politely, but his heart was untouched. Over the next hour, the pattern repeated. One by one, the hopeful maidens presented themselves, bowing, flirting, praising. Each one eager to be noticed, desperate to secure the favor of the future king. The prince nodded, exchanged pleasantries, and moved on, his interest fading with each encounter. At the edge of the gathering, unnoticed by most, Amara stood. The gray wool cloak Madhu had given her still rested on her shoulders, shielding her worn dress. She kept to the shadows, her gaze wide with wonder. Never had she seen such splendor, such towering marble columns, such intricate carvings in the walls, such endless silk and gold. But beyond the beauty, she sensed something else, a tension beneath the surface. The noble women laughed, but their eyes flickered constantly to the prince. They smiled at one another, but there was steel beneath their words. For Amara, who had spent her life reading the moods of those around her, it was plain, beneath the festival's glitter, a silent battle raged. She made no attempt to join the parade of fine ladies. What place did she have here? She was but a servant girl with no title, no riches, and certainly no gown fit for a queen. Yet still, she remained. A part of her could not bear to turn away from this fleeting glimpse of a world beyond her own. From her place in the shadows, she watched the prince move through the crowd, her eyes drawn to him not for his wealth, but for the faint weariness she saw in his gaze. It was the look of a man who sought something more. Then, as though sensing her gaze, Malik turned. Across the crowded hall, his eyes met Amara's. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. The murmuring voices, the music, the rustling silk, all faded into the background. In that moment, Malik saw not another girl vying for his attention, but a quiet presence that seemed untouched by ambition. Her face, though partially hidden by the hood of the cloak, held a gentleness, a depth of feeling unlike any he had yet seen that day. Amara's breath caught. She lowered her gaze at once, her cheeks warming. She had not meant to stare, to intrude upon the prince's notice. Her heart fluttered wildly in her chest. But Malik's curiosity was piqued. He had seen dozens of beautiful faces that day, flawless skin, gleaming jewels, practiced smiles. And yet it was this unknown girl, standing shyly apart, who had captured his attention with a single, unguarded look. Without a word, he signaled to one of his attendants. "Who is the girl in the gray cloak, near the west pillar?" he asked softly. The attendant frowned, scanning the crowd. "I do not know, Highness. She does not appear to be among the invited noble families." "Find out," Malik said simply. "And see that she does not leave before I speak with her." Across the hall, unaware of the prince's quiet command, Amara pressed back against the cool stone of the pillar, her heart racing. Whatever small dream had brought her here tonight, it seemed her life was about to change in ways she could scarcely imagine. Word traveled fast in the palace. In a place where power shifted with every whispered rumor, the smallest detail could spread like wildfire. It did not take long before murmurs rippled through the court. The prince had noticed a girl in a plain gray cloak. A mystery guest, unknown, unannounced, unlike the other finely dressed ladies who filled the hall. Ladies who moments ago had vied for the prince's gaze now cast curious glances toward the corners of the room. Groups of noble women whispered behind jeweled fans. "Who is she?" one asked. "No one knows." "A servant, perhaps?" "Surely not of noble birth." "She must have cast some spell," another scoffed. "Why else would the prince notice such a plain thing?" Up near the dais, where the royal family sat beneath an ornate canopy, Zira heard the whispers and stiffened. She had watched the prince all afternoon, her every move designed to draw his eye. And now this nameless girl had caught his attention first? Her pride burned hot. She smoothed the folds of her emerald gown and swept across the floor, her mother Hawa trailing behind her. If Malik sought a girl in a gray cloak, she would give him a story he could believe. At that moment, Prince Malik stood in quiet conversation with his captain of guards, a tall, sharp-eyed man named Idrin. "The girl by the west pillar, gray cloak, plain garments," the prince said softly. "Find her. Ensure she does not leave the palace until I speak with her." Idrin bowed slightly. "At once, Your Highness." Before the guards could disperse, Zira swept up in a flurry of silk and perfume. She sank into a deep curtsy, her voice sweetened with false humility. "Your Highness," she began brightly, "I believe I can save you the trouble. It was I who wore the gray cloak earlier this day. A bit of a jest, you see, one must stand out somehow among so many." Malik studied her coolly. "Is that so?" Zira fluttered her lashes. "Indeed. I thought perhaps it had caught your attention." But the prince saw through her charade with ease. The girl he had seen in the shadows had no vanity, no pretense. This one's arrogance hung upon her like too much perfume. "I think not," Malik said, voice calm but firm. "Captain Idrin, see to my request." Zira's smile faltered. Her cheeks flushed with fury, but she could not argue before so many eyes. Bowing stiffly, she retreated, her mother whispering angrily at her side. Meanwhile, unaware of the growing attention around her, Amara stood near a side archway, her heart still pounding. The press of bodies and the hum of conversation felt overwhelming. She knew she did not belong here, that her presence would soon be questioned. Slipping quietly from the pillar, she began to edge toward the nearest garden path. If she could reach the outer courtyard, perhaps she might find her way back to the village unnoticed. But fate had other plans. 2 palace guards, clad in blue and silver, appeared ahead, scanning the crowd. One of them spotted her retreating figure, the simple cloak, the plain dress beneath. "There," he said to his companion. "By order of the prince." As Amara reached the archway, a gentle but firm hand rested on her arm. "Miss," one guard said respectfully, "please, you must come with us." Amara's breath caught. I should not be here. It was a mistake." "No mistake," the guard replied. "His Highness requests your presence." Panic flared in her chest. How could this be? She had done nothing, spoken to no one. Why would the prince wish to see her? Yet there was no harshness in the guard's tone, only duty. With trembling steps, Amara allowed herself to be guided away from the archway, back into the grand hall where all eyes now seemed to follow her. Whatever fate awaited her now, there would be no slipping away unseen. Amara's legs felt unsteady as the palace guards led her gently but firmly through the grand hall. Her heart thudded in her chest with each step. Whispers swirled all around her, curious eyes followed her progress as nobles leaned close to one another, exchanging words too soft to hear. The weight of so many stares made her head spin. She wanted only to disappear, to return to the safety of shadows. "This must be some mistake," she whispered to the guards, her voice trembling. "I should not be here, I do not belong in the prince's presence." The older guard gave a faint smile, his tone respectful but resolute. "Mistake or not, miss, the prince himself has asked to see you. Best not to keep him waiting." Her breath caught. How could this be happening? She had tried so hard to remain unseen, to cause no trouble. Surely, if the prince discovered what she truly was, a servant, no one of rank, he would send her away in shame. The very thought made her throat tighten. The guards guided her through the throng and up the steps toward the royal dais. Her worn sandals whispered against polished stone as she moved beneath the gaze of lords and ladies who had spent hours preparing for this day. Amara shrank beneath her simple cloak, wishing she could hide her face. Ahead, beneath the canopy of gold and silk, Prince Malik stood. His bearing was noble, yet there was a deep stillness to him, a calm strength that seemed untouched by the glittering artifice of the court. His dark eyes rested on her, not with scorn or amusement, but with quiet curiosity. As Amara reached the final step, the guards stopped and stepped back, leaving her standing alone before the prince. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the festival seemed to fade, leaving only the pounding of her heart. Finally, Malik broke the silence, his voice low and steady. "Tell me, why do you hide beneath a servant's cloak?" Amara's eyes flickered upward, startled. The prince's gaze was kind, but searching, as though he looked not at her garments, but into her very soul. She swallowed hard. "Your Highness, I did not intend to intrude. I am no noble lady, nor was I invited here. I serve in another's house. My place is not in these halls." Malik tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Yet you came. You stood apart from the crowd, not seeking my notice, nor flaunting wealth or beauty, as so many have done today." Heat rose in Amara's cheeks. She bowed her head. "Forgive me, Your Highness. I should not have stayed. But when the chance came, I only wished to see the palace. It was a foolish dream." A faint smile touched the prince's lips, not one of mockery, but of understanding. "And yet here you are." She glanced up again, uncertainty in her gaze. "Please, Your Highness. I will leave, if you so command it." But Malik shook his head slowly. "No. You will not leave so quickly." He stepped closer, his voice dropping slightly. "Tell me your name." "Amara," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Amara," the prince repeated softly. "Why do you serve another so humbly?" The question struck deep, more piercing than she expected. Her gaze lowered once more, her fingers twisting nervously in the hem of her cloak. The truth was simple, yet one she had never spoken aloud to anyone beyond her own heart. "My father was a merchant," she said quietly. "A good man. When he passed, my stepmother and her daughter took everything. I was left with little choice. I serve because it is all I am allowed to do." Her voice wavered, but there was no bitterness in it, only a quiet dignity born from years of hardship. She stood with her shoulders straight, not pleading, not seeking favor. Her honesty rang clear and true. Prince Malik regarded her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The courtiers around them waited in hushed silence, straining to catch every word. Here was no scheming noble's daughter, no polished gem of the court. Here stood a girl who had endured much, yet spoke with grace, her spirit unbroken. Malik found himself moved in a way he had not expected. "You speak plainly," he said at last, his tone warm. "Without pretense. Without fear." Amara shook her head slightly. "I do not mean to be bold, Your Highness. I only speak what is true." The prince's smile deepened, touched with something rare, genuine respect. "Then you are rare indeed, Amara." Around them, murmurs rose anew. Nobles shifted uneasily, none had expected such words from the prince. Yet Malik paid them no mind. His attention remained fixed on the quiet girl before him. Within his heart, a thought began to take shape. Perhaps fate had brought her here. Not by design, nor by ambition, but by some deeper thread that neither courtly games nor royal decrees could weave. And in that moment, though neither could yet know it, the course of both their lives began to change. By morning, the whispers had spread beyond the palace walls, flowing through the city streets and across the villages like wildfire. Servants, merchants, nobles, all spoke of it, the unknown girl in the plain cloak, the one who had stood before Prince Malik and drawn his favor. "She is no noble's daughter," the gossip ran. "A servant girl, or so they say, one whose grace caught the prince's eye." The story twisted with each telling, gaining new color and drama. Some said she had bewitched the prince with a secret charm, others claimed she was an orphan princess in disguise. But in every version, one truth remained: Prince Malik had chosen to speak to her, to look past rank and riches, and see her as no other had done. When word of this reached Zira and her mother, their fury knew no bounds. "A servant girl?" Zira shrieked, pacing the floor of their chambers. Her hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms. "That is who the prince chooses to notice, after all my work, all my beauty." How his face was dark with rage. "This cannot stand. You are the rightful queen to be. That little wretch will not steal your place. No one even knows her name." They had returned from the palace late the night before, humiliated, their hopes crushed. Zira, in her finest gown, had received barely a passing glance. Now to hear that the prince had singled out a low-born girl, one they had left locked in a storeroom, was more than they could bear. "We will not sit idle," Hawa declared. "Let them speak of spells and sorcery. Let them believe she is dangerous. No prince would marry a witch." Zira's eyes gleamed. "Yes, if the court turns against her, the prince will be forced to cast her out." And so the lies began. First in whispers to favored courtiers, then to ladies of the court, who were all too eager to spread the tale. "Have you heard?" they would murmur. "The girl who enchanted the prince, she is no innocent maid. Why, I heard from a most reliable source that she practices dark charms. How else could she have captured his attention?" "Indeed," another would reply. "Even her own family keeps her hidden. What shame they must feel." Before long, the rumors reached the royal advisors and even the queen herself. Some dismissed the talk as jealousy. But others, fearful of scandal and eager to preserve tradition, began to murmur among themselves. "A servant girl, favored by the prince? Unheard of. If she wields enchantments, she could bring ruin upon the crown. We must protect His Highness from such dangers." Amara, unaware of the storm gathering around her, remained within the guest chambers she had been granted for the night. Servants whispered behind her back, their gazes wary. Once or twice, noble ladies passed her in the halls, their cold eyes full of scorn. She sensed the change, the air had grown thick with suspicion. Where there had been curiosity, now there was judgment. Where there had been silence, now there were whispers. But she held her head high. She had no charms to weave, no false words to speak. All she had was the truth, and a heart that would not bow to cruelty. Yet in the gilded corridors of power, truth alone would not always be enough. By the third day, the palace was awash in tension. The lies had spread far, taking root in the minds of many at court. The queen's advisers now pressed Prince Malik with warnings. "Your Highness," one elder minister said, bowing low, "the court is uneasy. Rumors cloud this girl's name. If you would protect the honor of the royal family, action must be taken." Another added, "Should she truly be pure of heart, let it be proven before all. The people must see it with their own eyes." Prince Malik listened in silence. Though anger stirred within him at the cruelty of these accusations, he understood the wisdom beneath the advice. The royal family could not afford scandal, nor could the court be allowed to believe in witchery where there was none. At last, he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Then let it be so. We shall hold a public trial of honor, not behind closed doors, but before the people of the realm. All who wish may witness it. And know this, no one of false heart shall enter the royal family, nor shall the innocent be cast aside." Word of the trial swept through the kingdom. On the appointed day, the great courtyard of the palace filled with nobles and commoners alike. From distant villages they came, merchants, farmers, elders, and craftsmen, all eager to see the truth revealed. Amara stood at the center of it all, beneath the gaze of hundreds. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her chin was lifted, her back straight. The plain gray cloak still covered her shoulders, a quiet reminder of where she had come from. She faced her accusers with calm eyes. Zira and Hawa stood to one side, their faces twisted with false sorrow. Behind them, a small circle of courtiers whispered darkly. Prince Malik took his place upon the dais, clad in deep blue and gold. His gaze never left Amara. He would allow the trial to proceed, but his heart already knew the truth. The court herald called for witnesses. One by one, courtiers repeated the slander that had passed through the halls, whispers of witchcraft, of unnatural influence. Through it all, Amara stood silent, neither weeping nor protesting. When asked to speak, she answered only with quiet honesty. "I know no charms but the kindness taught to me by my father. I seek no throne, nor do I covet gold. If it is wrong to speak plainly and with an open heart, then let judgment fall where it may." A murmur ran through the crowd. Many, seeing her grace beneath such pressure, began to doubt the lies they had been fed. Then, a twist. From among the gathered villagers, a voice rang out. "I will speak for her." Heads turned as an old woman stepped forward, leaning on a carved staff. Her face was lined with years, but her eyes shone bright with purpose. It was Miri, the village healer, known by all for her wisdom and fairness. She bowed before the prince. "Your Highness, I have known this girl since she was but a babe at her mother's knee. After her father's death, I saw how she was made to serve without kindness. And yet never once did she speak a bitter word. When others had no bread, she gave what little she had. When children scraped their knees, it was she who bound their wounds. Many here know it to be true." A chorus of voices rose in agreement. Villagers who had come to witness the trial now stepped forward. "She cared for my sick son," one man said. "She mended my roof when no one else would," a woman added. "She has lived with grace through hardship," said another. "There is no false heart in her." A hush fell over the courtyard. The tide had turned. Where once there had been doubt, now admiration shone in the eyes of the people. Prince Malik rose, his voice ringing clear. "Let it be known, the trial of truth has ended. No stain lies upon this girl's name. Her heart is as pure as the dawn." A great cheer rose from the crowd. Even those in the court who had whispered against her could say nothing more. And in that moment, Amara stood not as a servant girl, but as one whose quiet strength had won the admiration of all. The morning after the trial dawned bright and clear, the sky in endless blue unfurling above the palace. A quiet hum of expectation rippled through the city, for word had already spread, Prince Malik would choose his bride this day. Yet unlike past festivals, there was no guessing, no wagering among the nobles. They had all seen it, the girl who stood in simple garments, who met false accusations with grace and honesty. A servant girl no longer in the eyes of the people. In the royal court, amidst tall marble columns and golden banners, Prince Malik stood before his father, King Idris, and the assembled council. His voice rang steady and sure. I will choose no bride of wealth alone, nor one who seeks only a crown. The one I choose will be a partner of spirit, one whose heart shines true. He turned then, his gaze falling upon Amara, who stood quietly among the gathered lords and ladies, her head held high though her heart trembled. Amara, Malik said, his voice softening, will you stand beside me, not as one who serves, but as one honored and free? For a breathless moment, the hall was silent. Then Amara stepped forward, her voice clear though her hands shook slightly. With all my heart, I will, your highness. Not for riches or title, but to serve with compassion, as my father taught me. A great cheer rose from the court, not hollow or forced, but genuine, for the people had seen the strength of her spirit. At the king's command, heralds were sent to proclaim the prince's choice. Bells rang from the palace towers, echoing through the city. Across the marketplace and village roads, the news spread swiftly, the servant girl had been chosen. Amara would be queen. In the chambers below, however, fury still burned. Zira, pale with rage, threw a jeweled comb across the room. He chooses her. After all I have done, all I deserve? Hawa's face twisted with bitterness. We will not stay to watch this mockery. Let them think they have won, but the shame of it will cling to them in time. Yet the king's justice was swift. That very afternoon, guards arrived bearing orders of exile. Zira and her mother were to leave the palace lands, stripped of their finery and privileges. No longer would their cruelty darken its halls. Defeated, they departed in silence, their carriage rolling out through the gates beneath the gaze of a city that no longer bowed to their pride. Meanwhile, within the palace, preparations began in earnest. Seamstresses worked through the night, crafting garments worthy of a future queen. But when asked what she wished to wear, Amara's answer was simple. Let it be fine enough to honor the crown, but plain enough that I never forget where I came from. The day of coronation dawned golden and bright. Villagers poured through the palace gates, welcomed by the prince himself. The grand courtyard overflowed with people, farmers, artisans, old women with weathered hands, children with eyes wide with wonder. Many had known her in the days when she walked in shadows, now they came to see her step into the light. Amara stood before them, clad in robes of deep blue, her hair woven with wildflowers as well as gold. The prince stood beside her, his hand steady upon hers. As the crown was placed upon her brow, the crowd erupted in cheers. In her first words as princess, Amara spoke not of wealth or glory, but of service. I was once one who served in silence. I will now serve in the light. Let this be a court where kindness is honored above birth, where no voice is silenced by fear. From the shadows she had risen, and beneath the bright sky of a new dawn, Amara became a princess not only in title, but in the hearts of the people.